Welcome back to the Mountain Man Medical YouTube channel. Thanks for joining me. My name is Brian, and in this week's video, I wanted to talk about how to improvise a tourniquet correctly. In last week's video, I talked a little bit about why improvised tourniquets are a pretty bad idea unless you have to use them. Those reasons are, it takes too long, your casualty's bleeding out while you're trying to run around and find all the ingredients that you need to make a good quality improvised tourniquet. Reason number two is that it's not easy. Unless you have training and know how to do it, then making an improvised tourniquet isn't as easy as it seems. You can't just tie something on and call it good. You need to have a couple of key details in order to make a good quality tourniquet that's actually going to do what you want it to do, which is keep the casualty alive by preventing them from bleeding to death. So hopefully this video will teach you how to do that better and more correctly so that we can take care of at least this one problem. The third reason is because improvised tourniquets are not trustworthy. They can come unwound, they might rip, they might break, and we want to avoid that at all possible. In this video, I'm going to show you how to make a good quality improvised tourniquet, and hopefully we can get around this little part of it as well and keep your casualty alive. In the last video, I also talked about why direct pressure is a better choice, especially if you're all by yourself, and why you might want to just use direct pressure instead of trying to run around and improvise your own tourniquet. Now, in the last video, I also talked about why you might need to improvise a tourniquet and why this is a good skill to learn. You might run out of quality medical gear and you just need more tourniquets. You have more casualties, or maybe the one casualty that you're working on is really hurt and you've exhausted all of your own tourniquets. So that might be a good reason why you might need to go and improvise your own tourniquet, but you could potentially get around having to do any of that by just holding direct pressure on the wound until EMS or law enforcement can get there with a good quality commercial grade CAT tourniquet. Now, coming up with all the stuff that you need, this is where the art form comes into it. You can use a lot of different materials. There's just some key details for the different types of fabrics and windlasses and things that you might need to pay attention to. Don't be trying to make an improvised tourniquet for the very first time when you're trying to stop bleeding. Practice this a few times on your own and revisit this on a regular basis or you're going to lose it. You need to constantly be working on this stuff. You need to be reevaluating every few months and retesting your own skills, or else you're just going to lose all of this. When the time comes, you're going to be rattled. People are going to be screaming. There's going to be a lot of blood, and you're going to be trying to remember what this video said about how to improvise a tourniquet. So make sure that you're practicing this on a semi-regular basis so that it stays at least a little fresh in your mind. Now, one of my favorite ways of improvising a tourniquet is by using one of these. Now, most medics will know this as a cravat. A lot of other people know this as a triangular bandage. And we stock these in our kits. They're available on the mountainmanmedical.com website. And this is a great multi-use item. You can use this for a bunch of different things. I like to use these, especially when I'm taking care of fractures. This makes fantastic slings. But you can also use these to make a decent improvised tourniquet. And you're just going to roll this up. And we want a nice flat surface. We don't want to make this too thin. We want this to be about 2 inches, 1.5 to 2 inches wide, like that. And you're going to take your windlass. This is just a stick I found laying on the ground. And you want it to be 6 to 8 inches. You can use a lot of different things. You can use trauma shears. You can use flashlights. I've seen some people use pistol magazines. There's a lot of different things that you can use, but essentially you just need something that's long-ish that will allow you to get that mechanical advantage. This is what allows you to tighten it down tight enough so that it actually occludes the artery and controls bleeding. If you don't have that, then you don't have a tourniquet. And in fact, you actually might be increasing the speed with which they bleed out. So be aware of that. If you don't tighten down that tourniquet enough, you could be doing more harm than good. So you want to be able to get it as tight as you can to control the bleeding. Don't over tighten it, control the bleeding, but the only way you're going to be able to do that is with a mechanical advantage windlass. All right, so this is how you construct a quality improvised tourniquet. You're going to take your cravat or whatever material that you have. You want to make sure that it's not stretchy. That will cause problems, and you probably won't get it tight enough, and it could cause additional nerve damage at the location of the tourniquet. So try to use something that won't flex on you. A good source is some jeans. If you have some trauma shears on you, you cut off a nice little strip of their jeans. You're going to be cutting them off anyway to get a look at the wound, so you might as well just cut yourself off a strip that you can use to make a good quality tourniquet. 1.5 inches, 2 inches in width, a windlass, and you're good to go. What you're going to do is you're going to take the material, you're going to come down about 1/3, and then you're just going to tie it on. And this is not complicated. I'm not doing a fancy knot or anything. I'm just going to loop it around. Simple little knot. And we're going to tie it around the windlass, and we're going to have this little tail. That little tail is important. Now what we're going to do is, this is a nice little thing to have. This is just the ring from off of a Gatorade bottle. A lot of these floating around. If you happen to have something like this, then you can use that. We're just going to run this down. And we're just going to have that nearby. All right, now we got our improvised tourniquet set up. We've got all of our materials. We've got our fabric, our windlass, and we have our little retaining loop. So let me angle that camera down and I'll show you how to put this on. All right, here we've got our improvised tourniquet. Just gonna run this around a leg. And this one, we're not gonna tie any special knots either, just something that's gonna keep it on. Bangarang. And now we've got this loop. We're going to line that up right here so that's nice and close. And then you use the mechanical advantage of the windlass to tighten this down. Now the loop comes in to play. Try to get that set up so that it's good to go. And I'm not going to crank this thing all the way down. It's pretty uncomfortable, way more uncomfortable than an actual cat tourniquet. But you can see we can use this loop, pull that over the side, and now you've got this ring to hold this in place. Now, this is not the end all be all. This is not stable in any way. This would make me really nervous as a medic. You want to make sure that you're constantly checking your improvised tourniquets, all tourniquets, to be honest. You want to constantly be making sure that any tourniquet is working, but especially your improvised tourniquets. Because these are improvised, there's no guarantee that this is going to continue to work or it's not going to come loose or become unraveled. Especially in a tense situation like an emergency, you might be dragging the casualty, or they might be trying to walk out on their own or being handed off to other providers or whatever the case is, and you run the risk of this slipping out. And if it slips out, the bleeding can start all over again and the casualty can die. The whole time you're assuming that this tourniquet is doing what it's supposed to, when in reality, it hasn't been. So you want to make sure that you're constantly rechecking and reevaluating all tourniquets, but especially improvised tourniquets. Another thing that you can do to secure it is, now that you have these two long ends, you can come in and doubly make sure that it's not going anywhere. And you can do this if you don't have one of these rings. You can just secure it like that, nice and tight. And that's probably not going to go anywhere, but you want to make sure that you're constantly checking it. All right, that's how you can construct your own quality improvised tourniquet that'll probably do the most good for you. Again, improvised tourniquets are not your best bet. You want to try to carry medical gear, and especially tourniquets if you can. They'll do a far better job. They're far more trustworthy, and they are quicker, which is very important. But if you have to, that's how you can improvise a good quality tourniquet if you needed to in a pinch. Now, it also comes to note that you need to learn how to do this. If you don't practice it, it's not going to do you any good. When the time comes, you're not going to remember this. It's going to be in your mind somewhere, and you're going to wish you could have remembered, but you're not going to. You need to practice it. Get yourself some material, break out your own triangular bandage or cravat, and practice it a few times. Try it on a family member. But ideally, you should be carrying your own quality tourniquet so that you don't have to do this. Improvisation is an important skill to have, but if you don't have to improvise, then you shouldn't be trying to. Thanks for hanging out and listening to how to improvise your own quality tourniquet. And don't forget to hit the like and subscribe button if you learned anything. That's a free way to support the channel. And head over to mountainmanmedical.com and pick yourself up a Yellowstone Trauma Kit with a quality combat application tourniquet. And be ready for whatever the mountain throws at you. I'll catch you guys in the next one.